Hey, welcome back, watch fans. Are vintage Rolexes a scam? Is that whole vintage market a scam? I know a lot of you thinking, well, how can this piece of shit submariner with a banged out bezel and the faded dial sell for $50,000 or $60,000? I mean, you got that chimsy bracelet that's made out of tomato can material. Why is it selling for 50 grand? Well, that's what we're going to be discussing in this video. And on the wrist, we get the beautiful JLC dual time in rose gold. And by the way, this is I wouldn't call this vintage. This is kind of neo vintage, like mid 2000s. Now, here's the thing that's I find interesting. I'm going to draw some parallels with the vintage Rolex market and other collectible markets, whether it's cars, baseball cards, what else are people into? Art. It's something that I have experience in, and I don't know. People collect all sorts of garbage and nonsense. I mean, it's really a first world problem that people buy all sorts of garbage and they collect stuff. Why do they feel a need to collect all this crap? It's a fascinating thing. But let's get into this. So here's the thing: you're looking at some of these vintage watches, right? That again, Rolex is probably, I don't know, 90% of the vintage market. 90% of the vintage market is vintage Rolex. It's whether it's those stupid Paul Newmans, the Submariners, all that stuff. Hey, by the way, this is, I remember back in the day, this is the boat that Britney Spears would rent this out for the day. I don't know, I think for parties or something. I remember this is big. This yacht is a favorite of the local celebrities here. So anyway, the vintage Rolex market, some of these prices really don't make any sense to me. I mean, you look at some of these ugly watches, like these stainless steel Submariners, not the Yachtmaster. The Yachtmaster we know is a beautiful watch, but like even the Daytona, Paul Newman Daytona. Like, what's the big deal? Why should this piece of tin sell for $17 million? Right now, there's two elements, right? There is the story element, which is something that we talked about the other day, which is, hang on a second, let me pull this up, which is a lot of you tomato cans are suckers for that, provenance. The provenance. Every watch tells a story. Yes, we need to know if somebody was wearing this watch. If George Washington was wearing this Breguet on his wrist while he was wiping his ass. This is fascinating. Now, by the way, think about this. Paul Newman was probably wiped his ass while he was wearing that watch. Just think about that. let that association sink in for a moment. Now, why did these watches have these astronomical values? Even 50 grand, 30. When you get into these like six-figure type numbers for some of these watches, it gets a little crazy. I was going to say even 30 grand for the what do you call it? The Explorer, the Freccione, that ugly Explorer. What do they call it? The Steve McQueen, which is one of the ugliest watches ever made. Why is that thing selling for 30 grand? And by the way, those prices are not going down. They're strong. They're very strong prices. So there's a couple of variables. One is, in theory, there's a historical value. Okay, I get it. Look, some people, they're what are they called? The completionists. They need to have a full set. They need to have, that whole, they want to have every, there's some assholes out there who need to have every Submariner ever made. Right? That's their thing. I mean, every ugly Submariner, every Daytona, every whatever, date. Oh, the dates, right? They just need to have it. They buy one and they got to have all of them. Why is it? It's a mental sickness, okay? And then maybe they think they're going to sell the collection as I have no idea what these people are thinking. They just it's sort of like they're hoarding these they have to build these completionist collections, right? So that's part of it. So you have people who like the historical value, right? Now, in terms of aesthetic value, for the looks, which is the real reason why people buy watches. This is the thing that doesn't make any sense to me, right? Here is the crazy thing. Most of these watches are so ugly, like these submariners, these like 1950s, 60s submariners. I mean, they're ugly. They're made out of cheap tomato can metal. There we go, a little sea line there. They're made out of cheap tomato can metal. Why would anybody even want to wear that on the wrist? I mean, it's why would they want to wear that on the wrist when they could be wearing this instead? It makes no sense to me. So there is zero aesthetic value. Historical value, yeah, I guess you could be able to tell somebody, yeah, this is the first generation of Submariner. There's a bunch of you crayon eaters. You think you're going to impress people by saying, hey, this piece of shit on my wrist is, this is worth 50 grand, 100 grand, because it's a, first generation Submariner, or it's, it's the Paul Newman Daytona. I mean, all these things are kind of ridiculous, right? Especially when the watch is, when it's actually visually, aesthetically repugnant. Now, by the way, I do think that the Daytonas, again, the Paul Newmans, whatever, they're basic watches. There's nothing, I don't see anything that special about them. I mean, I guess they're kind of cool, they're nice, whatever. Is it worth 50 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand, $1 million for some of these crazy things? I don't think so. And look, we've seen these markets kind of burst before. Now this is before my time again. The bubble back, the Rolex bubble back was a thing that people were into back in the forever, back in the 80s. I think the 70s, the 80s, that was the thing, and nobody cares about those watches anymore. They've probably dropped 50% in price and value, and they're just. I mean, and if you count inflation into effect, then the drop has been maybe 80%. So I do believe that a lot of and again, the reason is because they don't have aesthetic value, right? You need to have ultimately aesthetic value in order for a market to keep moving. Okay, for a collectible market to keep moving, you got to have aesthetic value. So let's look at the car market, right? If you look at the cars that are maintaining value, again, I think that the collector car market is probably peaked, meaning like, look, young people are not into cars that much. So you got to look at who's going to be the next wave of buyers is going to be pushing up the market, right? So look, you have there were guys who collected the Model T Fords. Now I guarantee you that nobody in their 20s or 30s, no millennials, or even I don't know, Gen X, whatever, none of them have ever woken up in the morning and said, you know what, I would love to own a Model T Ford. Even that Hoovy's Garage guy, even that tomato can would not buy a Model T Ford or any of those shitter early cars, okay? And by the way, that is exactly what a Rolex Submariner is. It's the equivalent of a Model T Ford. I mean, it's ugly. It's utilitarian. Yes, historically, the Model T Ford and a lot of those early cars were actually important. But who wants to drive one or look at it? It looks like a piece of shit, right? Whereas, if you look at, there are some beautiful cars made. I don't know whether it's Bugatti. I'm trying some of the coach makers, Zagato. No, I don't know, but there are some beautiful. Coach designs of the 1930s, I believe it was 1930s was the primera. Again, I'm not an expert in this area, so forgive me, but I believe the 1930s was really the main era, and those things keep going up. Now, is anybody driving them? No, but look, those designs are so beautiful, they're so timeless that people, would a 20-year-old buy a Bugatti, a 1920s? That's a good question. Probably not, but they could definitely appreciate it. Now, if some, is it possible that some guy who owns, like, the new Bugattis would buy one of the historic ones? Maybe. Who knows? But it's so, again, that's the other thing with that car market, is that, it's one of those things that is, I'm not sure how much legs it has long term. Oh, here's a nice Maybach. Now, speaking of which, now this is a pretty classic design. It's unoffensive, right? So, in terms of, I think in order for the vintage market to keep going up, you need to bring in new generations of buyers. Now, do 20-year-olds appreciate a 1950s Submariner? I don't think they do. I don't think they will. I don't think anybody will care about it. It just looks old and shitty. Okay, that's what it looks like. And even the Daytona, it looks old and shitty. They would much rather have a new AP. I would much rather. If you ask me, what would you rather have? A banged out Submariner on a Chimsy bracelet, or a which is worth, let's call it $100,000, or would you rather have an AP 37 millimeter, which is a size I can wear, with that mint blue dial, the ice blue dial, stainless steel, the ice blue dial, which is, in theory, $27,000 retail, but selling in the 40s now. Would you rather have that, or a $100,000 vintage Submariner? You know what? I'll take the AP. I will take the AP, and I think most people would make that same decision. So, I think that is ultimately what is the gravity factor for that market. When I say gravity factor, it means, like, what is going to keep this thing really from going to the moon, right? There's something weighing it down. And I believe at the end of the day, it's aesthetics, right? These things are ugly. They're kind of obsolete technologically, right? They're quaint. It's quaint, okay? You appreciate it, but it's nice, okay? It's cute, but it's antiquated, right? See, that's the problem with technological things, right? Like watches, cars, etc. These are technological. It's basically machinery, right? Like what's on my wrist is a piece of machinery, right? So, the machinery, there's new and better things coming along all the time, and we should appreciate that, right? We should embrace technology. It's funny. I was getting a suit made by Edward Sexton, right? By the way, Edward Sexton, one of the great tailors, passed away. He actually made suits for Mick Jagger. Big, all the rock stars back in the 60s and 70s, and obviously more modern people. These are suits. This is not something, this is not a suit for going on stage in a rock show. So Edward Sex. So, and a lot of these suits, a lot of them, the bespoke suits they do with the fly, right? Is a button, which is a pain in the ass. To unbutton your pants when you take a piss, to unbutton your pants takes forever, right? Especially these the Italian ones, which, like, they got buttons everywhere. So they say, well, do you want a buttons or a zipper? He says, oh, we recommend the zipper because we embrace technology. I remember that line. He said, we embrace technology. That was a funny line. So look, we embrace technology, why would you wear an old piece of shit, Submariner, which is, unless it has sentimental value, right? So I think that is the piece that's going to keep the gravity down. Now, I do understand that people say, well, you don't understand. The market is the collectors, blah, 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 blah. No, I do understand. I completely understand. Look, if somebody came to me and said, hey, do you want to buy this? Again, I'm not an expert in the vintage watches, but if somebody said, hey, do you want to buy this, Submariner, 1960 Submariner, which in theory is worth, I don't know, $60,000. There's comps out there. You want to buy it for $30,000. I probably would do it. Why? Because, hey, you know what? I know it sells for 60, so maybe I can get out of it for 45 or 50. Immediately. I would not hold it. I would immediately sell it, okay? Because in theory, there's a market, right? But these markets are, it's the greater fool theory, right? We're basically hoping that, okay, because in the past, some idiot was willing to pay X. Well, that means it's worth, X today, right? Look, I was, dealing in paintings, right? I would buy and sell paintings all the time. At reasonable valuations, anywhere from, I don't know, my sweet spot was really in that like 10, 20 grand range. But, I've sold stuff for, 600 grand, 500 grand, a couple hundred grand, 50 grand, in those areas as well, right? And look, I'll give you an example. I sold a Robert Rauschenberg painting, right? It was a contemporary, it was something done in the 80s. And it was a piece of shit. It looked so ugly. Now, historically, it was, sort of important. I don't want to say important, but it wasn't a museum show. And so it had that kind of provenance, which actually does matter. So it had, it was in the catalog. It had the right labels on the back, and the subject matter of the painting was, I don't know, Robert Rauschenberg was basically a communist. I mean, it was always like weird social political bullshit commentary. I mean, I would. Would not hang this painting on my wall. I'd be like embarrassed. I mean, but anyway, this was a big size painting, and in theory, this thing, the value could be anywhere from. It's like you put your finger in the air and you see where the wind is blowing. It could be, I don't know, from 150 to I don't know, 500 grand, 600. It really could be anywhere because it's not that many traded, but. And again, this is something which I think is garbage. Would I be willing to, put up cash for it? Yeah, I offered the guy. I think I offered him. I don't know if it was a 150 or something because I wanted to. I didn't want to get too crazy. I thought maybe I can get 200, 250 for it, worst case, or 200. But sure enough, we ended up selling it for 600 grand, and to actually a major, very important gallery. I think they sold it for €1 million. All right, so that's a nice jump. Now, why would somebody pay that for that painting? I don't know. It's they think he's important. I don't know. It's not now. What does it mean? I mean, again, aesthetically, it's kind of ugly. Robert Rauschenberg, is he going to be relevant? Is he relevant? Is he going to have lasting value, especially of this period, 20 years from now? It's I would say probably some of his 60s paintings, yes. The early material, not the later material, which is not relevant, for the upcoming generation, right? Because I want to be looking at what are people in their 20s going to be interested in. So people who are 20 today, what are they going to be buying 10, 20 years from now, right? Or people who are in the 30s, what are they going to be buying 10, 20 years from now as they enter their prime spending years? So I'm not convinced about these ugly vintage watches because people ultimately want something that's beautiful on their wrist, right? People are buying for aesthetical reasons, and some of these old vintage steel watches are really ugly, and they're only of interest to some nerds who I think they're just getting high in their own supply. They're inhaling each other's farts, basically, is what I think is happening. I don't think these markets are really are how shall I say, built on a solid foundation. I think there's a couple of guys. There could be, I don't know, 20 guys who are really supporting this market, and that happens. It definitely happens. In the art market, at certain levels, there's only a handful of players that could be supporting the whole market, and a lot of them are doing it because they have a whole inventory, like the Andy Warhol market, right? There's a couple of players who are really supporting that market because they own literally a couple $1 billion worth of material, right? They could own 500, 1,000 paintings that they have in storage, that they're trying to slowly peel out. So I think the same thing is in the vintage market. You have a couple of tomato cans out there who are trying to boost up these prices. They're trying to support the market. Even Rolex is in the game, right? I mean, look, here's the thing: when you have one of these big players that basically have unlimited capital. I mean, again, it's almost like the Federal Reserve, right? If the Federal Reserve wants to move a market, they, there's an old saying, "Don't fight the Fed," right? Now, what if Rolex, all of a sudden wanted to, move the market in the vintage submariners or the Daytonas or whatever it is, right? I mean, because again, the more those values are pumped up, the better it is for the new models, right? I mean, so think about that. That is, I think, one of the drivers for a lot of the vintage market is, the companies. Now, but so if you're going to play that game, though, you want to be only on the side of, again, the don't fight the Fed. You want to be on the side of the companies that have, deep capital and can afford to support those markets because it's in their best interest. So we're talking about Rolex, basically. And then Patek Philippe to a lesser degree, far lesser degree. And then, you may have some of these other brands that, for example, the watch, like UG, Universal Genève, right? Or Genève, I don't know. So it's owned by Breitling now, right? And Breitling has cash, not Rolex money, not Patek money, but they have cash. Now, it would be in their interest to pump up the vintage UG market. Why? Because it would make the new models, give them some sort of more sex appeal. People could say, "Wow, did you know that a vintage model sold for $50 million?" Some crazy thing like that, right? Now, are they thinking that way? I don't know, but it's definitely something to consider because look, it doesn't take a big investment to move that market. It only takes an investment of I don't know, how many watches do you need to buy? Let's say UG, they're going for, I don't know, 10, 15 grand, not even 15, 10 grand, let's say, right? You spend 500 grand, you spend $1 million, and you can really prop up that whole market, right? And now let's go down the list. What about eBell? I know a bunch of these low-life degenerate dealers are trying to pump up the eBell market. The eBell market is like this banged out Mercedes. And this car, I mean, somebody's driving this car because I have seen this car here for years. I've seen this thing here for years. Somebody's definitely driving it because they, it's always moving from one spot to the other. I mean, I bet the top doesn't work. The top doesn't work. That's why they keep it. So yeah, that's why it's open. And by the way, you can actually, that's the good thing about LA. You can leave your car pretty much with the top, down, year round. Well, it does rain here. It does rain sometimes. It heavy rains, but usually in advance when it's going to rain. So yeah, you could keep the car. You can not put the top up for weeks at a time. Especially if you don't really care that much. There's going to be some little moisture, whatever. But anyway, so like that Mercedes, that piece of shit Mercedes. Now, car companies do this also, right? Why wouldn't they prop up the market to, increase the value of their own material? So eBell could do this. Who else is out there that has money? Audemars Piguet, could they? They don't need to. They're so hot right now. And the only market, I mean, again, the Royal Oak is the only thing that's selling, and they don't need any help with that. Who else is out there? JLC, Jaeger LeCoultre, my favorite watch. JLC could do it, but the problem is, they don't really have, here's the thing, here's my issue with the JLC. They really don't have any real flagship models. I mean, they're so diverse across the range. What are they going to be? Propping up the what do you call it, the reverso market. They're going to prop up the reverso market. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think that's going to work too well. They don't have any real model. They don't have any like specific model that would, kind of move the needle for the rest of their line, right? So what are the other brands that that we're looking at. Omega, they're probably doing it. They're probably active in the market. Again, I'm not in the vintage. I'm not deep in the vintage market, so I don't know. But I'm sure that this is going on, and people who are in this, they can tell you. Because look, here's the thing. The way these markets are manipulated is by, as they say in the stock market, painting the tape, right? So, if somebody bid, if a watch sells at a high, super high price, that sets the new benchmark, right? So that's the new price for the watch, and everybody knows it's a public record, right? So these auctions are, it's a matter of public record. That's why these brands may want to, bid it sky high, so that they have a very high print, and they paint the tape and that sucks in all the tomato cans like you, right? Now, at some point, though. These no, the question you're probably asking is, hey, this can go to the moon, right? Because Rolex has infinite money, and all these other brands, they have. Again, it doesn't take that much money to move the market with these vintage pieces, right? Because there's really not that much material. You're talking about, I don't know, a couple hundred watches in a certain brand at any given time that are desirable, right? Let's say UGE we're talking about, right? I don't know how many UGs are out there, that are kind of at auction or whatever, and it could be a couple hundred at any given time. So it doesn't take a lot, to move these markets. We've seen this happening in it's different lines, right? For example, let me talk about the Audemars Piguet. I remember the Perpetual. I was looking for that Perpetual. What is it called? The round, the one that was famous in the 80s, the Audemars Piguet Perpetual calendar. They were going for like $8,000, and I remember at any given time there were like, I don't know, 20, or there were like 30 of them on Chrono 24, and I couldn't find the right one. For whatever reason, there was always something slightly off, and all of a sudden somebody decided, hey, let's these things are a bargain. I guess everybody else figured it out, and I guess it was maybe a dealer or a few dealers to say, let's just buy up all these watches, and then we'll pump up the price. And sure enough, that's what happened. Now these things are like in the 20 grand range, that is what happened with that. So anyway, I think we've rambled on enough, and this is, of course, the #1 channel for high quality content and high quality editing and production value. So make sure you click the like and subscribe button and leave your vicious and nasty comments below. We'll see you all in the next one.